All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. How's my volume? I feel very loud. Is it good? Okay, cool. So I'm going to kick us off this morning. Look, we've got the cheering gallery. Grab a seat, whatever you want. Right. Oh, yeah, I'll do it. I'll run the mic. Okay. All right, so. If you guys haven't yet, please go ahead and check in. I know they're using this, as a way to track attendance, and also I think just turn it off and leave it on. All right, sorry guys, we're getting some tech figured out. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and check in, and that way we all know that your lovely faces were here. We do have coffee in the back, coffee and snacks, so help yourself to that. Trying to bribe folks, to stick around. And I'm actually going to kick off with a round of introductions. So my name is Laura C. Reddy. I'm the CEO of Nowhere Consultants. We are a digital strategy and technology company here in Kansas City, and just one of the 3 partners on the Heartland Challenge grant, which is really what sparked this discussion. To my left, we have Mr. Aaron Crabb, who is the founder and CTO of Nowhere Consultants. We have Mr. Na-im Al-Amin, who we will let introduce before he kicks off his piece, who is the founder of SWAGG INC. Rick Usher down here running the mic will be joining us up on stage. He spent 30+ years working for the city of Kansas City as the assistant city manager. And then we have Mr. Thomas with PCs for People, who is the other partner. The 3 of us, Rick, myself, and Tom, are the 3 partners on this grant. We're really excited to share some of our data and educate you guys a little bit about the digital divide and how it's affecting Kansas City, right? And what we can do about it, I think more importantly. I will say there are worksheets at the back of the room. If you guys want to grab those on the way out, you're welcome to. We'll talk a little bit about them. But the idea is to kind of get you guys thinking about the role that each one of you can play, as well as we try and tackle this massive problem of connectivity in Kansas City. All right, how do you want to do this? Yes. I'd actually love to take a quick second, and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to play past the mic, and I'll just run around. Can you guys tell us who are we talking to today? Who wants to introduce themselves? All right, give me just your name and what you do.
Oh, you want? I'm Rob Perfume. I'm the customer.
Awesome, thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sang, and I'm a life insurance coach and many other. Yes, Charlotte, you give a quick introduction. Hi, my name is Charlotte. I work for Tech Venture Studio, which is part of BIPOC Innovation Center, and also a startup.
Hi, my name is Kia McFlane, and I own a web hosting company. For those of you that attended yesterday, I was the first speaker, so.
Right.
I want
Nice to meet everybody. My name is Joshua Johnson. I'm actually one of the clients for SWAGG INC. This brother has helped me with a lot of things, getting connected with ECO, KC, different organizations, so good.
Thank you. So I'm Julie Robertson. I'm a sound practitioner, and I help people relax and unwind. Mr. Gladheart, I know you.
Yes, Will Gladheart, our company, we help organizations and leaders measure, monitor, and improve their culture, well-being, and anxiety in the workplace.
Come around to the back here.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Barilla. Small business owner. I was in a food truck. We do merchandise and
Thank you. I'll get the last couple here.
Hi, my name is Mary Martin. I work for a local nonprofit connecting Kansas City to international professionals and business owners.
Jim starts with I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I currently work for a nonprofit, KC Digital Readiness.
Also a grant recipient. Also part of the Department Challenge. Hello, my name is Startup Logistics.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for being here. The cheering gallery here up front was Lauren Conway with Innovate from PC. If you haven't met her, highly recommend you know her. All right, so appreciate you all being here. Hopefully you guys find this interesting. Let's go ahead and dive in. So you can see that the title of today's presentation is Vision, Digital Equality and Inclusion, a deep look at the role that digital redlining plays in the Kansas City entrepreneurial ecosystem. A problem that I think a lot of folks don't appreciate, like how endemic it is within KC, is lack to solid wireless or wired internet access. And the role that plays in people's ability to run their daily lives. Imagine being at home, right? And then you got kids, everyone's trying to use a hotspot, right? To get their homework, everyone's working from home. It's a really challenging issue. And what we're really looking at over the next couple of years is how that affects or dissuades people from being able to start the businesses that they want to start. Because, you know, you can't get connected to the internet, right? You're less likely to find out about things like global entrepreneurship. You're less likely to get connected to, you know, places like Casey SourceLink. At least that is our hypothesis. But take a quick second and introduce who is up here. I know I ran through my name. If you guys have questions, you can follow all of us on LinkedIn. If you sort of get just a quick intro from me.
Okay, thanks. Rick Usher, I'm with the Usher Garage, consulting on entrepreneurship, digital equity, and government policy. And so Marissa said I've been with the city until August of last year. So thank you for coming.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Esselman. I'm the Executive Director of PCs for People, Kansas City. We're a nonprofit based out of St. Paul, Minnesota. We operate in 9 cities. We'll be hearing a little bit more about us here in just a little bit. Glad to be here.
Good morning, everyone. How we doing? Really excited to be here for Global Entrepreneurial Week, where I met Rick 4 years ago. My name is Na-im Al-Amin. I'm the founder and CEO of SWAGG INC. Our third witness to give guidance, inspiration every season. But what I've been most of my life is a returning citizen or someone who's had a privileged experience and returned to the community thereafter. I'm also on the board of directors for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, DEI, and just really excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Crab. I'm a tech guy, so if there's any questions about, as we talk about data, you know, how we're going to collect that data or how we're going to do the analytics on that data, I'm the guy for that. And I'm also the guy for audience participation. So I want to encourage everybody, as we have this conversation, to ask questions and raise your hand.
I turned it on. Sorry, I sold my access. But yeah, please feel free to ask questions like as we go. Discussion is obviously, you know, enough of us here. I'm happy to run the mic. So yeah, we will be here for you guys as we get into this. As I said, here's Mr. Na-im. So one of the hypotheses was the question that we're trying to answer, right? Which is not necessarily our original question, but it is the question that I think we found the most provocative in some of the research that we have done is, what if an entrepreneur was given the resources that they need?
I didn't do it. So I would like.
Is it back? Yeah, it should be all. It should have no link. All right. So yeah, what if every entrepreneur was given the resources they needed to succeed, right? Like, what would that look like? What would the ecosystem look like? What would the global network look like, right? Stole this phrase actually from India who's seeing right around. She said this last night, the dream deferred, right? So let's look at some of the data behind entrepreneurship, as in who makes it and who doesn't. Kaufman put out a really interesting report, I don't know if it was a couple years ago, maybe last year, that asked the question, who doesn't start a business, right? In Kansas City, or in the area, they polled 22,000 individuals, entrepreneurs, or wanted to be entrepreneurs. And they, in that particular, that report focused on the pre-entrepreneurship leaders, right? The folks who didn't start a business, which is just one of the demographics that we're interested in pursuing. Other folks that we've taken a look at are what we call necessity entrepreneurs, right? So these are the folks that have started a business because maybe there is no other path for them. Mr. Na-im can speak to that, right? So, you know, you are stepping back into society after having a felony, like not a lot of places are going to hire you, right? And being able to show that entrepreneurship is indeed a viable path forward is really important. Additionally, we look at side hustle entrepreneurs, we can all relate to that, right? We're all side hustlers on some level. And then the informal entrepreneurs, right? These are folks that if you were to corner them and ask them, they may not call themselves entrepreneurs, but they have a landscaping business and they're paying people, or they're selling party goods out of their home, right? And, these people may not immediately identify with the language of an entrepreneurial ecosystem, but it makes them an entrepreneur nonetheless. So I'm going to get into the pre-entrepreneur leaders just a little bit before I turn this over to everybody. So I think these two statistics are really important. 50% versus 15%. 50% of the people who consider but don't start a business start by just talking to a friend or family member first. Always. And so, I think we've all been there, right? We get a hold, we call our mom, right? We call our dad, we call a friend, we sit down and talk to a neighbor. And depending on what those people in our ecosystem have had exposure to, they may or may not know where to send you, right? If you have questions about starting a business. And they may very well talk you out of it, right? So I think it's interesting that in the category of people who did not start a business, half of them, so 11,000 some odd people, went to a family member or friend first and then opted to not begin the business, right? Within that same 22,000 folks, right, 15%, only 15% of them felt like they had access to or knew how to get a hold of a business professional within the organizational ecosystem, right? To be able to ask the questions and, make an informed decision or not, however that breaks down, right? Other sort of interesting pieces about this, I think, without going all the way into this report, at the end of the day, it was sort of a net as far as like who left, like 48% versus 47%, depending on how educated the individual was, college and non-college, is how the report broken out. So I do think it's interesting that like who you interact with like matters, and what resources they have available to them to get you on a path to success also matters. And one of our theses here, our hypothesis, is that if we can bring better connectivity into people's homes and into people's lives, then we can start to change some of those numbers. Woo! This is like a quick other slide. So this really captures the problem within the Kansas City market, right? So if we look at the number of online only businesses that started in Kansas City after 2020, the number went up the number jumped 19% from the previous year, up to 54%, right? 9.1 of those of the self-employment rates in low-income areas are also actually down, which is great, which tells me that like maybe people are trying to start something right on their own. But then if you look at the number of percentage of individuals in Kansas City that don't have reliable internet in the house, it's like 24%, right? And during a pandemic where everybody made the jump to online, what happened to that 24%, right? How many of them were maybe in that ecosystem of people who wanted to start a business, didn't know how, right? Like who are we missing? So this, I think, just does a really good job of categorizing. It also breaks it down by the different demographics, right? So not college degrees, Black, white, women. So happy to share more on that later. Again, this could be a whole round. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Aaron. I'm going to turn my mic off. Yeah, we're going to wait for the mic. I'm going to cue him. And we're going to talk a little bit about what Kansas City can do to help solve some of these issues.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so what can Kansas City do to address digital inequality? And that is, that's what our team is working on, and that's what this presentation is about, is, to get engagement from the public and to hear stories that have lived through these problems and how they've overcome them, and trying to figure out what could an organization like ours, what can we help empower PCs for people to do to address the entrepreneurs, or the left behind entrepreneurs and informal entrepreneurs specifically. And I personally boil it down to three things. We can connect digitally, so that's sort of the foundational component. Everybody has to have that physical connectivity. And then we need to connect them to the ecosystem. So this room that we're in today, like Larissa mentioned, you would have a hard time finding this community if you aren't digitally connected. But even once you are digitally connected, we need to make sure that we have inroads from this community into those people that are just beginning their digital literacy journey. And then finally, we need to just make sure that we're empowering everyone and not need to live in our silos and our sort of egocentric thinking. we think about these problems. So again, we encourage all of you to share your stories.
Is your mic on? Is it like that?
All right, so I'm actually going to turn it over to Rick to talk a little bit more. I don't know anyone in Kansas City, she has to know more about the ecosystem in Kansas City. So give me just a second to turn this off, and I will turn it over to you, and we can talk just a little bit about some of the organizations that are here to help.
All right, thank you, Larissa. Yeah, so, you know, in my work over the years, you know, we founded KC BizCare in 2009. That's being run just incredibly today by Mia Richardson, and just a little pitch to an open house later this week at KC BizCare. They moved back into City Hall. But so the work that I did at the city, but continuing to do today, is just looking to identify gaps in the entrepreneur ecosystem, tying that with digital equity, digital inclusion efforts that I've worked with Tom on for years, to make sure we can, as Larissa said, you know, see what would happen if every entrepreneur had access to resources they need. So pivotal to that, or I guess primary to that, is reliable high-speed internet services at home, a laptop, a desktop, other devices beyond your smartphone. We're running into a lot of micro entrepreneurs that are running their business on a smartphone. It's possible to do, it's not possible to scale, or get connected to you know, larger events. I've heard of people trying to pitch at competitions using their smartphone and trying to run slide deck. So it just came to me over, you know, the work I've been doing, that we have entrepreneur support desks in Kansas City. We're familiar with food deserts, you know, economically distressed. We have the same thing with entrepreneur support. So there are the KC resource rail that KC pushes. There's over 240 entrepreneur support organizations in the Kansas City metro area, which is phenomenal. And we're very networked, even, you know, compared to other cities. We're actually having more basis for entrepreneur support as a community outside of Kansas City than we are in. So, but as you look at the prospect corridor throughout, as I mentioned, with economically distressed neighborhoods, there's only maybe 6 organizations with a street address east of Truist in Kansas City in our economically distressed neighborhoods. And so that's been changing over the years. A great example is Gift, Kansas City Gift. They took on the space at 5008 Prospect that had previously been the Woodville's Business Center. They're doing phenomenal work. We've been working with them. We feel like they're closest to the entrepreneurs that we're trying to reach. They have a monthly marketplace. So where you know, makers are coming in to sell their items, and they don't have an NC store, they don't have a Facebook marketplace, they don't have even a website. So giving entrepreneurs these tools, you know, helps them grow, helps them become job creators, and really helps with larger efforts for economic mobility and neighborhood stabilization, employment, job, being a job creator. Those are the things that create generational wealth in the community and help, you know, our city grow. So part of, I guess I can call myself a fractional ESO. So in the work that we've been doing, as we're working with entrepreneurs, just identifying organizations out of that 240, and there's others that aren't listed in that 240 that are serving the entrepreneur community that we're trying to reach. And these are very, very difficult people to find, because sometimes we're finding they don't even know they're a small business owner or they're an entrepreneur. And that's too far into the work, but it's been interesting to see that, and really like stories we've heard, and we've been having some listening sessions. I think it was with the Na-im brought to us that the business owner had said, well, until I got the grant from Gift, I wasn't separating my business income from my household income, and that grant gave me that opportunity to see myself as a business owner. So we're trying to make the key to the entrepreneur support side is providing a meaningful connection to an entrepreneur support organization for you as an entrepreneur, emerging entrepreneur. Which means that, like, we're not just gonna say, hey, call PC Source Link, or hey, call Gift. We're gonna make a personal introduction for the folks we're working with, and then follow up with them to see how their progress is going, and that will help us create a almost an on-ramp to the resource grid for emerging entrepreneurs.
I'm gonna ask a quick question. How many of you guys are familiar with the term digital divide? You guys have before, it basically is exactly this, right? When you live in this sort of valley, and Tom so eloquently illustrated one day on the whiteboard for us. You live in this valley, right? That it just doesn't get the same sunlight as everything else, right? And it's not for any lack of anyone's fault, sort of systemic choices being made by broadband connectors and all this kind of stuff, right? To not service those areas. So I am gonna hand it over to Tom now, which this is for people just to talk a little bit about what some of those tools for digital transformation and change really look like. I'll let him kick that off.
Okay. Well, you can't talk about tools for entrepreneurs without talking about two important things, fortunately, that are in the back of the room: caffeine and sugar. So, whether it's now or whether it's after our presentation, please take advantage of these critical tools. No, seriously, I'm going to quickly go off script for 1 minute. And the first thing I want to do is I'm looking at each of you in the eye that are in this room, and those of you joining us on Zoom who are entrepreneurs or who support entrepreneurs. Because I want to thank you for being here and thank you for doing what you're doing. And I want to make a connection between what you're doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing and why PCs for People, which is the nonprofit that I run here in Kansas City, does what we do. And that is, there is a direct correlation between connectivity and what you're doing, employment. And then you can make those direct correlations between poverty, crime, quality of life, longevity. What we know is this: we've only been a digital society for about 25 years. And in places like what Larissa was saying, where there's these valleys, where people who have just been unable to access affordable internet and usable affordable computers, there's a direct correlation in those areas: higher poverty, higher unemployment, lower education, lower life expectancy. So we know there's a correlation, but what we're learning in PCs for People is it doesn't mean just because we can provide you with tech, we can provide you with affordable internet and computers, that it's going to solve the problem. What we're figuring out and what all of us have to realize is those individuals who have lived in that valley, what they're survivors, right? Somehow you survive with a cell phone, you survive any way you can. But when you realize that you have to start a business to survive, and you have to connect with people any way you can, it might not be as intuitive to realize how much more effectively you can do that if you've got decent affordable internet, decent affordable computers, and the skills to learn. So I just wanted to tell you what PCs for People has been doing since 2008 is we created a model where we want to make sure we have devices and internet connectivity that people can afford. And we want the devices to be good, usable devices, but to be affordable, they're ones that were previously used. And typically big organizations, big companies, they offload those to for-profit recyclers. They get rid of them, they scrap them. What we try to do is get the best used computers and we refurbish them. So we make them available to people that need them and that quality that they can afford $50, $100, $150 for really good computers. But beyond that, now we're building Wi-Fi networks. We're providing mobile Wi-Fi hotspots, and it never costs more than $15 a month. And now that the federal government, and there's unlimited data, and now that the federal government is providing subsidies. There's a big subsidy program, if you're not aware of it, called ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program. And it's going to be funded for many years. And if you qualify as low income and you're having trouble getting internet or paying for internet, you get up to $30 a month to pay for your internet. You get a one-time subsidy of $100 to get a computer. What we're doing in our program is working with entrepreneur support organizations, having events like this, getting the word out to identify those of you who are running a business or want to start a business, but somehow you're lacking those tech tools. And as a result, you're lacking the connection to this ecosystem of support. Come to us, make sure we understand what's going on in your life. We're not going to tell you what you need. We're going to learn from you what you need, and we're going to make sure that we can provide things that track along with what's going to make your life better. So that's my, Matt, you cut me off. But seriously, it really starts with you guys understanding how grateful we are that you're doing what you're doing, because it makes quality of life for the entire community better. Lauren knows this with the work she does with Innovate Her. You know, when you support innovators, when you support people who are even just creating a business just to survive, guess what? If you live in the surrounding area, you should care about it because it makes our whole city better. And that's why we do what we do.
All right, so 2 seconds. I would like to know what. We'll get it figured out. How many of you guys in the room, whether in your business or elsewhere, made the jump to Zoom or a more digital approach in 2020? Agree with me. Right? I mean, I did. No, we all did. How about the people you serve, right? Or the people in your community? And I think that's a question that we've asked a lot of the support organizations. And the results are really surprising, right? The number of people who they themselves as runners of organizations made the leap. But they never really turned the camera back around and asked the folks that they were serving how they were going to make that leap, right? And I think that speaks really nicely to what Tom has been saying. So to that end, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Crab. Okay. All right, perfect. I'm going to let y'all do it. Thanks. But we're going to open up for some open discussion. So get the questions ready. And I'm happy to chat with you all as well.
Cool, thank you. So Na-im, tell me a little bit about your journey, your experience. How did you come to start your organization, and what's your origin story?
Thank you. Thank you, James. And so my origin story, wow. I'm someone that, like I said, I've been impacted by mass incarceration over 30 years. And I was born in Junction City, Kansas, in the Midwest. Shout out to the Midwest. But through the life-changing event of foster care, I would go to Los Angeles, California. And so it has become environmental for me. While I was able to enjoy my nucleus family in the Midwest, never experiencing violence and trauma from my mother or anything like that. Just due to the dysfunction of her life, we were displaced with foster care. And moving into Los Angeles in the late 1980s, at the height of the crack epidemic, the crippling blood war, the social inequities levied upon Black people. You know, my journey has come through foster care, came like a prison to arrive at social entrepreneurship, which is the vehicle that allowed me to create a new business model in the mass incarceration space that works with people before they are released from prison, developing good education, employment etiquette, and entrepreneurship. But again, to get to a place where we're actually doing the work, it's been quite the journey. So I was released from prison March 22nd, 2018, after serving a 5-year prison sentence for conspiracy to distribute, a crime in which I didn't commit, because I didn't turn state evidence on one of my friends. The charges were dismissed against him, and they were filed on me, right? And I went into prison with 3 degrees from Kansas State University, executive Florida Coastal School of Law, also University of Kansas with a Master's of Public Administration program. But again, couldn't receive any opportunity from an employer for that sustainability piece, and was ushered into a corner where I made decisions that weren't reflective of where I wanted my future to be. Wrote my business plan while I was incarcerated, serving those 5 years. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if I write the 8 letters of SWAGG INC, if I'm not inspired by someone that taught me the definition of legacy. One of my friends was in the process in 2013, prior to going into prison, of signing a major music deal. And I asked them, I said, who are you going to sign with? Rick Ross or some other name? And Nipsey Hussle looked at me, he said, for me, it's about patience. I know the moment I signed that contract, my life changed forever. It's about ownership, creating a long-term plan, and elevating the status of the people around you, right? And so that was how I was able to write an unreasonable business model and arrive at untraditional business arrangements and secure a fiduciary in terms of funding that will elevate the status of the people and families impacted by mass incarceration. And so along that journey, back in 2018, I met Rick Usher at Local Entrepreneurship, and we had an opportunity to connect. My business plan was still written on paper, and the risk that you mentioned at the beginning, having, the benefit of having a mentor, somebody to point you in the right direction. And that's what Rick did. I started transversing through the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Hello. So and when did you move back to Kansas City?
March 22nd, 2018.
2018. So when the pandemic happened and everybody switched to the, digital, did you have any trouble making that transition, or do you know any stories or people that you've worked with that have struggled to make that transition because of their, because of their status?
Are we on? Okay, so put that in perspective. And so I got an amazing opportunity in 2018. I was hired by UPS as a package member, then I was promoted to human resources. And in that role, I started, so while I had, I didn't have any digital skills, but I was able to develop them in that role at UPS. And so I kind of had, a head start. But when the pandemic hit, I had to switch to Zoom platform. I had to, know my Wi-Fi signal was strong, and all of these things were new to me. And I fumbled a lot of meetings in the process, right? And one thing that I didn't have was any education. And so if we're going to talk about digital equity and digital inclusion, it's important to know, what we are reviewing. And so digital equity is the what, digital inclusion is the how. And so I think the 3 pillars of digital equity is, access to the internet, devices, and then digital literacy. But the inclusion piece relies around having an educator that first, the way those tools and resources work in relation to the experiences that you want to have, right? So that's very critical.
Another thing I'd like you to talk about is the term social entrepreneur. Like what differentiates a social entrepreneur from a different kind of entrepreneur?
Great question. Really great question. One I would like to elaborate on. And so an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur, they differ kind of. An entrepreneur is associated with a white male tech looking to scale, right? It's about scalability. Social entrepreneurship is about utilizing the 5 principles of design thinking, empathy, ideate, prototype, define, and test in terms of eliminating pain points that lead to creative purpose and profitability, right? So again, the definition of social entrepreneurship is the 5 principles: empathy, ideate, prototype, define, and test in terms of solvable pain points that your community experiences. So for SWAGG INC, it was reentry. the process of returning to the community after a prison experience and going right back within 1 to 3 years, right? That was the pain point that we don't want to disrupt. And so we introduced, the prototype model of pre-entry. So that's the difference. Social entrepreneurship is always going to relate back to the community, leveraging their passion and creating a profitable business model that elevates the status of the people around you.
Are there any other social entrepreneurs in the group? Anybody else identify more? Would you like to elaborate on social entrepreneurship, or do you have any questions or anything for the group?
Give it light. I don't actually need a mic, I'm pretty loud naturally. But Na-im absolutely nailed it. I love centering that human-centered design, like finding that empathy for the user before you even try to craft a solution. But I mean, for me, social entrepreneurship, it's how you lead with heart, how you create systems and you create equity and you build connectivity between people who can help our members, SWAGG INC folks, anybody who's looking for digital equity. How can we connect all of these systems in equitable ways to help people succeed? And you're doing the work, man. Like, well done.
Thank you. Anyone else identify as a social entrepreneur or want to share just a quick anecdote?
Joshua, will you join me 1 second, please? On stage. All right, and so again, what we do at SWAGG INC, we work with people before they're released from prison. That's or people in the community that have a family, they'll reach out and they'll ask for our support. As in the case of Joshua, his auntie communicated with me that he would be coming home, and she wanted to secure resources for him, and she, was here to support Joshua. And so what we've been able to do, Joshua expressed interest in the coding space, right? And so again, remember that digital equity is about internet access, devices, and digital literacy. And so we were able to connect Joshua to our board member, Tammy Buckner, also co-founder and BIPOC. Let's go, Tammy. We were able, Joshua was able to communicate his goals, his ambitions, where he was currently at in his skill sets, and we were able to develop a real-time plan, and he had tools that he's able to utilize from BIPOC. So he was able to have access to a laptop, also a hotspot for 5 years of free service, right? And also upskilling in the tech space with an option for employment at a later date, right? And so Josh been home 4 weeks, but this is what the push is, to make sure that people have the resources and the tools to be successful in the tech space. So I'll let Joshua talk about his story and whatever else he wants to share with us this morning.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you. Thank you to my brother Na-im. He's been a big help. My transition into society has not been easy, but I've been maintaining. I have a huge support system with his brother SWAGG INC. It's really been helping me. Basically, I gotta bear with me. I'm not going to public speak, but my story consists of doing a 9-year bid. After getting out, I realized a change in myself. I realized my social interactions have been more productive. I'm meeting people that are actually doing something in life, that are trying to go places, that are trying to be as positive as possible. I do have skills in coding. I took a launch code course before I was released from prison. I completed it. I first found out about Na-im at the graduation. My aunt told me about it, and I was excited to get in touch with him. He's got me in touch with Tammy Buckner. And we talked about everything that we were planning on doing, like getting the laptop, getting these courses going online, and just getting familiar with more coding experience. What I want to do in the long run is web design, graphic design, and know how to put the codes together in order to make the program run the way I want it to. So He's been helping me with that as well. He's a good brother. He's really supportive. He has a vibrant energy, and he's serious. He's serious. When you put that game face on, I'm like, okay, yeah, I gotta pull up correct, but I'm thankful for SWAGG INC and Na-im and all the support they've been giving me on my transition back into society, and it's up from here. So, thank you.
Any other questions? We have lots of opportunities for audience participation. Rick, is there anything online going on?
No, I haven't seen any questions online. If anybody online has questions, put them in the chat, please.
Yes, anybody online, feel free to drop something in the chat. So Na-im, tell us about some of the other folks you work with and maybe some other organizations that you work with, you know, like inform us about the ecosystem as you see it.
In reference to the digital equity inclusion piece, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So yeah, it's a lot of it's support out there for us. And so as we just mentioned, we go KC, they're doing some amazing things and have some amenities for people interested in coding. Also, our partners at Goodwill, they have opportunities, especially for not only the at-large community, but also returning citizens. So we were able to take Joshua to Goodwill, and he was able to review their curriculum with Google, which is really dope. Also being able to have access to a laptop for their program, and some other supporting services. We have our guys over at Porterhouse KC, who Ryan, love Dan and Sharon. And also our guys over at Give KC, Generating Income for Tomorrow, we love them too, who have created spaces for entrepreneurs to come in and have that connectivity if they have that low broadband in the environments that they live in. And so the call to action, I would believe, is how might we solve for free or low cost broadband for everyone? Right? How do we get there?
Compadre about timing. I would actually like Rick Usher. I have a question that I think is in your domain. I'm curious about the kind of the history of like the term digital inclusion and digital literacy, and you have obviously been involved in what the city has done, and it's been your space for a long time, right?
Yeah, thanks. And to your question, Tom can talk about this as well, but right now, federal government, so pandemic, it made the digital divide page news. And so that we're talking about design thinking and empathy. There has been an empathy gap on, recognizing the digital divide, for really since, I think since the beginning. And there are a lot of folks working in that space, like Tom has mentioned, he's worked with pieces for people, and the other groups nationally, libraries, of course, have always been there to try to bring access to the community, and in our entrepreneur support community, they play a very strong role for folks at the beginnings. And I'm trying to find folks that are using library computers to run a business. It's a bit like chasing unicorns, because from what I hear, they got a day job and then they're side hustling with the library, so we're still looking for those folks. But back to the attention now being paid to the digital divide is really incredible. Timing has seemed slow, but the Infrastructure Jobs Act, Tom mentioned the Affordable Connectivity Program. These are programs that are very well funded through the federal government. They're making internet services available to households making under 200% of federal poverty levels, other qualifying requirements for that. And in Kansas City, we have the benefit we have is a lot of competitive providers. So PCs for people is using Wi-Fi hotspots. We also have facilities that have wired connection, right? Some we've got fiber and some 50 years, multi-unit dwellings. But what we have in Kansas City is kind of a last 100-foot gap. internet providers talk about last mile. We have the last 100 foot as our, the affordability of internet services. But you might have AT&T, Google Fiber, Spectrum running through everybody's backyard, but if they can't afford the subscription, might as well not be there. So that's really what the Affordable Connectivity Program is about, funding. And all of these providers I've mentioned, including PCs for People, there's another organization, Digital Cases Now, that's growing in the city, providing ACP-supported internet services at home. So it's still a matter of the additional funding for digital equities coming out this year. Missouri has a broadband office, Kansas has a broadband office. They've only had these offices for 3 years. 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. So you can see like that empathy gap didn't become front page news to the state governments until the pandemic or maybe shortly before, but they're really ramping up their efforts now. There are regional councils involved. They're working on a regional digital equity strategy. So everybody in the room, watch for those public conversations to happen and invite your friends and family to come and join that so that they really are hearing from people in the digital divide. That's again the challenge because the only way to really reach them is through just getting out in the community, churches. I love Tom. Yeah.
So thanks, Rick. I just wanted to add on to it. And again, I really want some of these comments to hit home for every one of you all who are here. And I'm looking in the eye for those who are on Zoom. It's really easy to just overlook what we're going through right now and how historic it is. If you think back to when our country had homes that did not have running water and did not have electricity, and what it meant to our nation to all of a sudden get homes connected with running water and electricity. It took years for people living in those homes to understand how to be comfortable with it, but it advanced people's ability to just be connected and have a decent lifestyle. 20, 30 years after that, our country built this network of interstate highways all throughout the country. So all of a sudden it became relatively safer and more affordable to travel, to see your family members who had been dispersed through wagon trains and horses prior to that. And honestly, since the building of the interstate highway system, there has never been in our country something as significant, as monumental as this window that we have right now to literally provide internet for all. And you drive through areas where there are people, they may have access to broadband. It might run along the curb or through a telephone pole in their neighborhood, but it's not affordable for them to connect to that service. And even if it was affordable, there's nobody there that they trust who can help them understand why would it matter for me to sign up for it. And so through this program, if you yourself, or if you know anybody who is trying to do a business, grow a business, and somehow they think that they're getting by just fine with the cell phone, but you know that they could benefit from better internet or a better laptop or a better desktop or somebody that could help them figure out how to go online with their services or build a website for them. It doesn't matter if they don't know anything about that. But if you do, and if you know that they could benefit from it, now's the window where we've got to spread that word. Because once we do get internet for all, it's going to provide access to tools that otherwise we don't know how important they are. We don't know what we don't know. But once we have it, you're so much more empowered to do it. And it's not just us giving it to you. It's us getting to know each other so that those of us who are experiencing the benefit can, in a trustworthy manner, bring other people into the fold. That's what I love about sessions like this, because I feel like we're family. And the biggest impact is going to be reaching out to other family. And Na-im, you have a magic for articulating the significance of what we do, but more importantly, why we do it. And it's having an enterprise for the sake of lifting up those around us. And so I really appreciate that.
Hi, everyone, Sarah with Global Tech PC, and thank you all so much for everything you've been talking about, just being such great advocates. So I feel like there's a little bit of a crossover in certain communities within Kansas City, crossover between a digital divide and a language barrier. And so I'm curious whether you can talk about, especially Na-im was talking about a key pinnacle is digital literacy, right? So can you talk about language access when it comes to digital divide that you know of? Ways that we can improve upon it, things like that.
It's a great question. The other mic is dead, so Irving will take this walk.
We got a four-part answer. But yeah, thank you for that question, because it also helps me highlight some of the other groups that we've been working with. Toolbox QC is run by Gabe Munoz in Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County. They're definitely working on that English as a second language barrier. We did meet with some of the entrepreneurs they're serving, and then prior to us here, Pedro Zamora with Hispanic Economic Development Corporation was on the stage. I know they have programs fully designed by Dave Guillermo, that it provides business training for entrepreneurs, and he does that in multiple languages.
In terms of the technological language, that's really perceptive of you, and I appreciate that. And so one of the places that we offer our program and services is in Transitional Center, Kansas City, right across the way from PCs for People. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that we can't even begin to speak the language of technology because we don't even have connectability. Right. And so like in this environment where it is essentially center block and it's hard to so when I'm interviewing clients and I'm trying to operate our systems, I have to, write it down and wait till I get to the office and then put it into the system. I can even begin to bring in our program and service providers that are able to teach this digital curriculum because we can't connect. Right. And so now we can't even teach the language. And what happens often than not, our clients will be released and they will be released not knowing the language of technology, and we're not able to get in front of it. And so really thankful for PCs for People and the work that you're doing, Mr. Esselman. I was able to benefit from those laptops there early in my journey. And, while I'm not there now, I'm being introduced to an Apple product, but it got me to the Apple product and all the things that we're doing now. So it's really big and I really appreciate that.
And I just want to address the aspect of language barriers, which really is about refugee and immigrant populations. And that's becoming a much more prominent gap in the services that are being offered so far. That being said, again, those of you who are entrepreneurs, those of you who support entrepreneurs, being online opens up worlds. There are a number of online digital literacy training resources that are now making themselves available in multiple languages. Google is a good source, but I would look to things like there's a wonderful resource called North Star Digital Literacy. It's actually coincidentally also based out of Minnesota. But North Star provides online digital literacy modules, training modules, and I think they're up to 5 different languages so far. And it's important not only to identify the curriculum in different languages, but identify and collaborate with groups here in town like JVC, JBS, Delalam. There's a lot of organizations that proactively reach out to immigrant and refugee populations. And if they're equipped with some teaching tools that apply different language skills as well, it's a gap that's starting to get noticed more. So I think it's a very relevant question. But I do know by being online, it's getting easier to find those resources that will bring them to our communities so that they can become face-to-face, in-person teaching and training resources as well as what's available just online. But I do want to emphasize the importance of getting online. It literally opens up worlds of difference to those of you who are working with people who otherwise have not been able to access that in the past.
Oh,
This, next part is like me was disabled. So it's not easy for me to, it's not easy to take my dials and put it down on paper or put on a computer without having access to a PC or a PC and access. So what y'all doing to help you let me know disabled?
Lines are really quick.
no, that's good. Yeah, whoever wants to take this one.
But again, that's another area that doesn't get a lot of attention. It doesn't get a lot of publicity. But state of Missouri, for instance, does have a very advanced Department of Assistive Technology. And if you're an individual that otherwise could benefit from a lot of computing technology, but either you might have trouble articulating something that needs to get down in words, or you don't feel comfortable typing or spelling. There's a lot of things that can translate what you say into computer text. There's a lot of things. We've worked with a couple of areas that need assistive technology keyboards that are larger keys and that have a neon yellowish green color that's more visible and different things like that. They do exist. Again, ironically, it requires being online to access some of them. But I mean, it's our obligation to be involved in sessions like this, just so we can spread awareness. Because at the end of the day, finding someone that you can ask, that you can let know what your needs are, it can lead to network of people who can find the resources that can help you. And so if we do nothing more than, add one more connection to this ecosystem, then I feel like we're doing what we're meant to do. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a great point.
Awesome. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna have the whole person in Kansas City. They have assistive technologies that people with disabilities can do. The whole person thing. Yeah, it's not Main Street.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions before I turn it back over to Aaron to close this out with a big question?
Oh, okay. So my big question is just everybody think about what it is that you can do to contribute to this. And Na-im and Joshua, I'm curious if there's anything that you can think of. Is there anything that in your experiences is being overlooked? Anything that we should be doing that we aren't doing?
Absolutely. I think that, so for SWAGG INC or for me, there's an untapped talent pool in the Department of Corrections. And if we strengthen our technologies within that system, we can be training and develop the next world leaders, the next generation of leaders. There's an untapped talent. There's 1.9 million people incarcerated. 70% of those are otherwise eligible to participate in the workforce, right? And so that's what I would encourage people to look to, either through volunteering, creating a nonprofit, supporting a nonprofit, or supporting a person that works in that facility, in that kind of way.
Just to piggyback off of what he said, experienced it firsthand. Me personally, I learned how to become a great artist in prison. Of course, I got the coding skills. I met guys that took culinary arts. They cook these dishes that are just immaculate. Like they got skills like in there. It's like gold. So reach out to those guys. Get in touch with them. Like you said, try to create a nonprofit organization where they can put their skills to use and be able to benefit from it. So.
Yeah, give them a round of applause. We have a question from our Zoom participants. You want to? So Janet asks, what resources are available for rural communities? And I wish that Jim had not walked away, but there are a few. I can touch on one really quick, just So as I mentioned in the beginning, the three of us, these were people of Usher Garage and Nowhere, are part of the Heartland Challenge grant. And as part of that, Hoffman did these learning cohort sessions where we got to meet the other grant recipients. Super cool. There's 8 of us. We're all trying to change the world. It's gonna be a fun 2 years. But one of those organizations is based out of Junction City, Kansas, and they're really focused on this idea of Main Street businesses, right? So in their case, they're not just educating these businesses or the community rather about shopping local and not going to like the typical chain, but they're also educating business owners on how to start a viable business, how to get connected, to the internet, right? How to tap into those resources that do exist. And I think it was them that they were talking about like on the military base, like we talk about informal entrepreneurs. On the Fort Riley military base down there, there's a whole group of like 200 plus military spouses that all have side hustles. They've created their own mastermind group, right? Now, whether or not they're online per se or not, or whatever, is sort of, beside the point. But the fact that there are these, sort of blossoming pods of individuals within these different communities that are really trying to find innovative solutions, I think speaks to, one, Anna and Janet's question directly, that there aren't a ton of resources. But the ones that are really looking to they're having to start, a little bit further back. I think even then kind of to Na-im's point, if we're not even online yet, how can we start to share the language of being online, right? If you've never connected to the internet, how can you talk about building a small business and being a small business owner if you've never actually worked in a community that values small and local enterprises, right? Because, I don't know if y'all been Junction City, but yeah. But there's like 7 McDonald's and that's it, right? I think. At least one town. Tom, did you have something you want to add? Anything?
Just,
Yes, you can speak to this.
yeah, so again, going back to what's happening right now in terms of the recognition of this problem, not just in urban areas, but across the country. In fact, it's dominated by rural areas. The commitment of our federal government to provide internet for all is going to include not only fiber infrastructure that helps connect rural communities, but an entire new layer of resources that will provide everything from devices to digital literacy training resources, and connection to organizations that understand how much our country can benefit from just better digital fluency, I guess is the right term. We're talking about language, because I mean, and how many of us might deal, for instance, with a grandparent or older adult who just might, kind of rebel against having to learn computers because, they made it their whole life without it. Why should they have to learn it? But it becomes relevant all of a sudden if you can show them through like a FaceTime with a grandchild who's 1,000 miles away that they haven't seen for 20 years. And it's all about relevancy. It's all about empathy. And now we just have this opportunity to take advantage of resources that otherwise, sometimes our government goes up and down on what resources are available, but it's getting the resources and using them with that kind of empathetic approach, I think is what's going to make sure that folks, particularly in rural communities, are going to benefit from it because it's the most obvious area of digital divideness in our country. It's probably much more intensified in our urban areas because it's kind of it's accelerated by racial and economic disparities that have been so brutal for families living in urban areas, but it's certainly balanced across our countries.
Thank you. Anything else on Zoom? Okay. Hopefully that answered Janet's question. Janet, the other thing I would say just is I would encourage you to go check out the other Heartland Challenge recipients. You can get the name. I don't remember the Junction City group, but I know that they really are working on this idea of connectivity within that rural community and can probably answer some more direct questions if you've got something specific. So what I'm going to do real quick is I passed out a worksheet, which you're welcome to take with you or just kind of flip through or think about, or I don't know, I'll told y'all to talk to me about it. But in the last few minutes of today's presentation, I wanted to introduce what's called the person goals framework. We are not experts in this by any stretch of the imagination, at least I am not. But we did learn about this through the Kaufman Learning Cohort. I think it's really smart, and I know that for us as an organization, it was really transformational. And so basically what this asks you is to say, how does who you are as a person influence how you exercise your leadership in your role, right? What is your formal title? Like just literally, what do you do? Who are you? Right? And how does it describe what you do and what authority you have? And then how do you where do you exercise your primary leadership role in the system that you're a part of, or I think more importantly, the system that you're trying to affect change within. So if you have a pen and you want to think through it, you're welcome to. We can just kind of talk about it. But I think the thing important about number one is it's not about like how other people see you, it's how you see yourself, right? And so when we were through this learning cohort, we really did sit down and they made us sort of write out like 5 or 10 characteristics that we thought about our own self, right? Reluctant leader, or enthusiastic leader, or community organizer, or whatever, right? Tech guy, like it doesn't matter like how you see yourself. But getting clear on kind of how you see the value that you bring, and then starting to examine how closely that ties to the roles that you have, either in your professional or personal lives, and then also how you take the opportunity to exercise on those characteristics, right, and exercise that authority. So yeah, I wanted to make sure you guys have a resource. I think it's a really interesting way of looking at leadership. Do we have anything? Yeah.
I just want to take a stab at answering.
Yeah, please do.
Context. So how does who you are as a person influence how you exercise your leadership in your role? Wow. And so for me, I had a little bit of the not the doppelganger syndrome. The imposter syndrome, right? And here's why. Because I grew up in the Crenshaw district. I'm a product of that environment. It's in South Central Los Angeles. It's a place right in the middle between the cemetery and the penitentiary, right? And so I came up through the ranks of drug dealing. First, having to secure relationships to get drugs, then having a corner to sell those on, then graduating to a dope house, then graduating to multiple spots out of town, right? And so I came up in that system, and I have these type of proclivities associated with being the dope dealer, if you will. And so shaking those and redefining myself through social entrepreneurship, I find myself conflicted sometimes when I'm on the outside, the founder and CEO of SWAGG INC, but on the inside, I'm feeling like Lil Depot for Rolling 60, right? And so I go through those changes all the time. What is my formal title, and how does it describe what you do and what authority you have? So I'm the founder and CEO. I founded this nonprofit, which means that I created the precepts of it, and the CEO, I do the work to help it grow. My role, though, is to connect, serve, and ask. That's my obligation, is to connect, serve, and ask as the CEO of SWAGG. Where do I exercise my primary leadership role? That's going to be in environments where people are in positions of power to do something about creating change that we're speaking about, right? And so yeah, I think that's how I would answer these questions. So anything else like to take a step back?
I can say that your answer to that last question, I think, is really good, because you've identified that where you need to be effective is you need to be connected to or adjacent to the people that have the power to affect that change, right? And then you're advocating for them. I think that's a really good answer to that. I think going through this exercise can, your first draft, you clearly thought about this before, even if you haven't used this framework, you spend your time thinking about it. And your first draft will probably be, less nuanced than that. And then as you work on it, you realize something like that. That's where I need to exercise my power.
Absolutely. Anyone have questions or thoughts just as we kind of round this out? Other questions? Do you feel like we answered your question on the language? Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys all for coming. I'm going to give you all about 15 minutes. Please help yourself to the back. Like I said, we brought some, just fresh coffee and snacks and all this kind of stuff, and stick around. I know we're all open to chatting. Through the Heartland Challenge grant, the thing that we are really trying to pin down is sort of what is the right combination of tech and social equity, I'll put it, right, or social connection that is going to work best to serve and reach some of these informal entrepreneurs. So if you yourself have that cousin, because we all just kind of have that guy in our family or that woman in our family, right, who's like started the thing and is just sort of on the fringe, right, of the resources and the ecosystems that we're aware of, we would really just invite a coffee chat, right, so that we can get more of their story, learn who some of their mentors are, learn what their struggles are, as we work through this process, with partners like Na-im and Tom and all these folks, right, to try and enact some change, and kind of be the bridge between resources that exist in Kansas City. Anyone else have closing remarks before I hand it all back? Tom, maybe? Final piece?
Surprise, surprise. I just wanted to have a closing comment because it has struck me personally. Prior to this, I've not met Na-im in person, and I just want to tell you how blown away I am by your just grasp of what it is you're all about. And there's a special reason why I wanted to bring that up, because those of you in the audience, those of you on Zoom, you're thinking to yourself, I am nowhere near that level of polish. It's okay. I mean, sometimes, you know, you put great role models in positions like this to inspire you to understand some things that you can see in yourself. And that's what I wanted my closing comment to be. You don't have to see yourself as polished as Mr. Joshua or Mr. Na-im. You can be inspired by that. And if you just have one iota of sense that you've got that in you, or you could benefit from something, that's why we do events like this, Global Entrepreneurship Week. That's why, you know, Larissa and Aaron and Rick and I are doing what we're doing as part of this Heartland Challenge grant. And so it only matters if you just reach out, email us, you know, call us, text us, reach out to other people that you know that you think might find that little nugget of inspiration that's going to make a difference in their lives. Because I can guarantee you, you've made a difference in mine just by meeting you guys in person and seeing how real and genuine your journey is. And I know it's in many ways just started, but it doesn't go anywhere without making connections like this. So I just want to thank you, and thank you guys for joining us as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Round of applause, everyone. And I did go ahead and throw the car names, and then Na-im is just right there on the backside of that, up. So, if you guys want to connect with us on LinkedIn, you can find us. I failed to put our contact information in there, but you can hop on the internet, ironically enough, and connect with us on social media. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good. Good to meet you.